everything around me. Green, get the money, dollar bill, yo.
What's up, guys? Got another Crowfall video for you today. This is going to be a different type of Crowfall video, as it's going to be more of a discussion / opinion piece rather than normal gameplay. But I'm going to be ranking what I think is most powerful in Crowfall, all the way down to what I think is the least powerful thing in Crowfall. And you got to keep in mind that this list is kind of an average across all types of fighting, whether it's small scale, big scale. It's kind of an average. You know, there are some classes that are just awful at small scale, or really good at small scale and terrible at big scale. So you got to sort of keep that in mind. This is kind of an average. So let's get started. What do I think is the most powerful thing in Crowfall? What is the best? Overall, what's the best? Now, a lot of you guys are probably thinking, oh, it's got to be Stormcaller. Like, it's got to be there's nothing, no, it's got to be the Stormcaller. That's easily the most powerful. You're sleeping on something. You're sleeping on something that is low-key insanely powerful, but everybody just sort of like accepts it as this is just the way it is and normal. And that, my friend, is the Crusader Cleric. That is the #1 promotion class in Crowfall. It's hands down the best. I mean, it is the linchpin for everything. For every single thing in the game, small scale, big scale, whatever, everybody wants a Crusader Cleric. I mean, they're incredible. So, yeah. Hands down the best class, best healer plate for whatever reason. I don't know why. Yeah, really, really damn good. So, what's next? What's next is what you guys probably thought was first, and that is, of course, where is it? The Stormcaller. Absolutely, these two classes have locked down the S tier rank in Crowfall. They are hyper dominant. I mean, in all aspects of the game, small scale, big scale. Does not matter. These two classes are just the linchpin for it all. Crusader's kind of like Reinhardt in Overwatch. It's like, it's secretly really overpowered, but nobody's upset by it, so it's just kind of been that way forever. Nobody's really crying about, oh man, this class is so incredibly durable and is healing the crap out of me. Like, nobody really complains about that. Whereas Stormcaller, of course, gets a lot of complaints because they just blow you up and they own your entire team. These classes are it's kind of problematic that these classes are as powerful as they are on this list, because they're quite easy to play. Honestly, it's pretty easy to get value out of both the Crusader and the Stormcaller. You can kind of just hit your buttons whenever they're up in no particular rhyme or reason, and you're being effective with those two classes. So those classes really are, if it's not on cooldown, put it on cooldown. That's kind of how you play both of those classes. And better players might order that a little bit better, but it's not really mandatory. I mean, it's just the way it is. So these two classes are absolutely locking down S tier, 100%. Now let's move on to A tier. These classes are amazing at what they do, but they're not a mandatory linchpin in all avenues of the game. And first, we're going to start off with one of my favorites, the Slayer. The Slayer has been nerfed quite a bit with the removal of almost all of the animation canceling of the game. I think I might have had a little something to do with that with Zyback 3. But the Slayer has been nerfed along with almost every other class in some way. But Slayer got a bunch of animation cancels nerfed. When they nerfed all the animation cancels, Slayer lost like 4 of them that I will tell you about, 4 of them. So yeah, they got nerfed pretty hard last patch, but they are absolutely still the #1 ganker in the game, hands down. They have the escape ability, they have the range, they have the damage. They are the best at third-partying fights, unlike an assassin or a dirge or a brigand or something like that. You can third-party a fight with very little commitment. If it's not going your way, it's very easy to bail on a fight on a Slayer because you're already at range. It's very easy to hide and gank people at range, jump on a roof, start the fight up high. You have a lot of advantages with just the range alone. So the Slayer, it's just an incredible ganker. It's the best ganker in the game. Maybe the best 1v1 dueler in the game. One of the best, at least. It's definitely the best ganker. It's got a ton of ganking tools. So Slayer is incredible. It's a great class. Now, what's next? Titan. Titan is a super solid melee DPS right now. Even if Vengeance wasn't bugged, I think I'd still have it at A tier with Berserk. It's a great class, a great small scale brawler class, great in super small scale, like 1v1s it's good. Great all the way up to probably 10v10. Getting bigger than 10v10, it's a little questionable, but it doesn't completely fall apart. With Vengeance being bugged the way it is, Titan is absolutely A tier. Potentially, with Vengeance in certain situations, it's teeter-tottering up to S tier in certain situations, but because those are certain situations and not all the time, it's going to remain in A tier. Titan is super duper solid. And lastly, another class that is teetering on S tier, but it's not quite powerful enough in all avenues of the game, would be the, where is it? Pit Fighter. Pit Fighter, it's incredibly good in small scale. I almost want to put it in S tier. I'm gonna leave it in A tier. I want S tier to only be the most absolutely outrageous things. So I'm gonna leave Pit Fighter in A tier, but it might be the best A tier. It might be the number 1 A tier. So yeah, it's good. It's got the survivability. It's got it's a great debuff platform. It's got Mortal Strike on its LMB. It is a great frontliner. I mean, the survivability is outrageous. The survivability is outrageous in small scale. And because it's so outrageous in small scale, it still works in larger fights. So, yeah, Pit Fighter is a great class. You can use maces. The mace disciplines are very good right now. Lot of different stuff you can run on Pit Fighter. You can run Plague Lord, be a full-blown debuffer with Plague Lord Troubadour. Mortal Strike on your 3rd LMB. Got a lot of stuff you can do with that class. It's solid. Now let's move on to the B tier, which is absolutely slam-packed with promotions. I mean, the B tier is the number 1 tier in terms of the amount of classes in it. It's outrageous, which is good, because B tier is middle of the road, and that's how everything should be. So let's start with the entire Ranger class. So Archer, Warden, and Brigand. I put these all in B tier. Now, Brigand, I know some people are... I think there's some potential there. Which is why Brigand is in B tier. With even a very, very few small tweaks. I've messed around on Brigand quite a bit. With a few small tweaks, it could be a super solid ganker. I mean, like, one thing could change on Brigand that could bump it up to B tier. This one really could. It really could. It's very volatile, I guess, on this tier list. It could go down to C tier real quick, or it could go up to A tier real quick. Warden and Archer are super solid. Absolutely super solid. They are in the B tier 100%. Archer, great range DPS, got some pretty decent burst. The CC changes have sort of taken it down from where it would have been an A tier probably in previous patches, because the CC was a little different. But absolutely a B tier. Potentially Archer could jump up to A tier in the future with gear. Maybe. They sort of nerfed some of the scaling on the gear, or some of the scaling on the LMB from 300% to 200%, but still, even with that, I mean, they get pretty crazy with gear. So Archer, super solid B. Warden, super solid B. Brigand, who knows. Now, the entire Frost Mage class coming up right behind it. So Frostguard. A lot of people sleep on the Frostguard. This class, man, it's good. It's very, very good to at least have a couple in big fights. That Frost Armor, while it did get nerfed, is super good. The I believe it's 25% damage reduction on your Freezing Blast. That's super good. I mean, the amount of value you get just out of that skill alone is outrageous. So Frost Guards, they got nerfed with that, Frostguard patch, where they were just outrageous. Frost Guards, that one patch, were like S+ God tier, unbelievable. But now, solid B. What's next? Ice Caller. So all the healers are going to be B tier, but they're not. They're a lot better than, I guess, B tier gives them credit for. So if you stat Crusaders, there actually is a bit of diminishing returns, because you can only have, one thing of, what's that ability called? You can only have one of each cleric hot up at a time, right? So if you have tons and tons of clerics, then you'll have some diminishing returns with some of your abilities, because you can only have one version of each heal over time spell. So if it's a big fight, you really do want some diversity in your healers, so you're not overriding each other's heal over time effects. So Ice Caller is a fairly solid healer in the bigger fights for sure. Not as good as, it's definitely not as good as Crusader. Like, it doesn't hold a candle to Crusader, which is why it's a whole 2 tiers below it. But it's not too bad in the bigger fights. And Archmage can definitely blow people up. It definitely still can do quite a bit of damage, even though it's not godly damage like it was in that previous patch. So solid B. Next, we have the Templar, the Fury Templar. Fury Templar could be an A. In the bigger fights, it could be an A. But since it falls apart in the small scale, like since it is not that great in small scale, I'm putting it on B. It would be A if the game was only 10v10 or, you know, big fights. It would be A, potentially even S. But since the game is played in various states of group sizes, it's going to be a solid B. But very good class, very good CC. One of my favorites. Next we have the Paladin, which is the same story as Fury. Really, it would be S if the game was only 10. If the game was only big fights, Paladin and Fury would just be up there. But again, game of averages, you got to sort of play it out. But it is a fantastic class. Paladin is numerically the number one healer in the game from my testing. If you were to have 100% optimal healing, and your Divine Light was hitting everybody, and your Devotion was hitting everybody, and you had perfect uptime, Paladin healing is the best healing in the game. Like, nothing even holds a candle to it. But getting that optimal healing is almost impossible. So, Paladin is super solid, though. Absolutely. Next up, we have another Myrmidon spec, and that is the Conqueror, which in my opinion is super slept on. I think that the Conqueror with that crit debuff, as well as with the CC after the CC changes, is very good. I think a Conqueror Myrmidon with Troubadour or something like that is a solid choice. Maybe Conqueror Myrm, Troubadour, Shieldbreaker, something like that I think would be an absolutely solid build. It's some stuff I've experimented with in the past. So Conqueror Myrmidon, I think, is absolutely a solid B tier. Next, we have a Confessor spec with the Fanatic. So the Fanatic and the Inquisitor, I'll be honest, I'm not super knowledgeable on either of these Confessor specs. I know the Fanatic is pretty good AoE damage. I mean, getting that severe burn up on everybody with tornadoes and all that stuff, pretty solid. It's pretty solid for that. The survivability in the big fights is pretty good. With your ultimate, it's a get out of jail free card. I think it's currently bugged, but yeah, it's super solid. Both of these are really solid. The Inquisitor is sort of an elemental break bot. But yeah, super solid there. Also, the Sanctifier I have in a solid B tier. The Sanctifier, I have seen some people do some very cool things on Sanctifier. So don't sleep on this. Do not sleep on the Sanctifier. All three of the Confessor specs are a solid B. So, yeah. Next up, we have the Knight. So, starting off with the Secutor. Secutor is pretty solid with the chain pulls, shield bashes, pretty decent survivability. All the Knight builds are honestly going to be B tier, so let's just go ahead and put Sentinel up here and Swordsman up here as well. All of the Knights, even if Knights are terrible, like even if for whatever reason the Knight base kit is terrible, the cooldown reduction on Knights make it a great platform for really anything. If you want to run Runecaster, Juggernaut, Plague Lord, I mean any discipline that has a long cooldown, you can almost get 100% uptime on it. There's very few disciplines that you can't get 100% uptime on the various abilities if you're a Knight. So even if these are all terrible, Knight is still going to be, I don't think Knight will ever be a D tier. I think it'll always be B or at the worst C for that reason alone. Secutor is great. You're super tanky. You've got a ton of shield bashes going out, taking people's dodge pips away. Sentinel, my baby. You can do some interesting little Ganeshan ganking builds. Good in group fights. Swordsman, the same thing. They're just all solid. The Knight's super solid B tier. Now we've got maybe a bit of a controversial one, Alpha Warrior. So Alpha Warrior, I think a lot of people would probably have it at C, but I have seen coordinated Alpha Warriors and good Alpha Warriors that know how to, I guess, toe that fine line of knowing when to get out and knowing when to play a little passive, and them and their Alpha Warrior buddy coordinate a neck breaker at the same time and just delete somebody. So I think Alpha Warrior is not quite as consistent of a B as something like Knight or Ranger, for example. But yeah, I think it's in good hands. It is solid enough to be on B. It's a weak B because it's got some higher skill requirements in terms of awareness, in my opinion, for it to work. But yeah, definitely a B. And another one that's a little weird, Radical. So Radical's got some bugs right now with the what's that ability? Searing Light being fire damage instead of holy damage. Also, the animation cancel nerfs. I think Radical's probably going to get that animation cancel. Maybe. We'll see. But I think Radical might actually retain their old animation cancel, and they'll go back and fix that or something. Because it seems like the Flash cast nerf was... I think they just did that like heavy-handed to just get them out of the game really quick, and they're going to go back and hopefully with a more fine-tooth comb and just sort of fix them. I don't know. We'll see. But Radical, I think, is also it does enough damage to where I don't want to put it in C. I don't want to put it in C tier because it does enough. It's close though. It is teetering on C, so we'll be optimistic and put it in B. But there's a lot of damage. You can do a lot of damage on Radical. Seriously, a lot of people sleep on it. And another one that's in B tier that's probably going to catch some of you guys off guard. Not all of you guys. Some of you guys know the truth. But Arbiter. Dude, Arbiter, this patch, bro. Don't sleep on the Arbiter. They put out a lot of CC. They're in plate. They're a halfway healer, halfway DPS. A lot of disruption there. So do not sleep on the Arbiter, man. I have fought some Arbiters, and I have been surprised. So Arbiter, I'm putting in B as well. And then what else do we have after Arbiter? Dirge. Dirge damage is outrageous. Dirges can do a ton of damage if they have the uptime. The only reason I wouldn't put them up here with like Slayer ganking, because they can do more damage than Slayers. Dirges can do more damage than Slayers, and they're in plate. The only reason I don't put them up there is because they have uptime issues. They have no sort of gap closer, no passive snare, no they don't have something like Pursuit or Chain Pull. If they had something like that, they'd be a lot less frustrating to play. It is very easy to escape from a Dirge for the most part. I have been experimenting with some, Bard builds or Friar even for the speed buff for Seeker's Blessing. I've been experimenting with some things like that, like Seeker's buff with like Friar and Escape Artist, like just trying to, fix that uptime weakness, right? Because they do crazy damage. So I think there'd be, especially you can pick your targets, right? Your Dirge, right? If you're fighting something that you can get away from you, or that gives you a hard time, you just don't take that one, right? So Dirge, give that a B. And Earthkeeper, it's a healer. It has the thing with Earthkeeper is that if you have two Earthkeepers, there's not a diminishing return like with two Crusaders. Like if you stack Earthkeepers, you can eat as many healing orbs as you want, right? You can have two Earthkeepers putting out 1 million healing orbs, and the person is not there's not many diminishing returns like if the person has multiple hots, right? So solid B tier. You've got Nature's Avatar. You've got some things in that kit that at least put it in B. Again, not as good as Crusader. Absolutely not. Not in isolation. Nothing is as good as Crusader as on a healer. Now let's get into C tier. So we're going to start off C tier with something that might be a little controversial because I know there's a lot of people that are super into the Vindicator. The only reason I put Vindicator in C tier is because they get blown the hell up. They do not have any survivability, really. I mean, damn. I know they do a ton of damage. I know. I've seen it. And, I mean, oh my god, those Divine Lights AoEing 5 people at once for that much damage with the parries, with the Holy Warrior. I mean, dude, it gets crazy. I get it. But they're in Mail, and they have very little mobility, and I've had no issues killing Vindicators. I mean, they just get blown the hell up. So because of that, I put them in C tier. And again, they've got the penalty of the fact that they're not good in small scale. They just really aren't good in small scale fights for the most part. So again, if the game was only played in bigger fights, they would be bumped up at least a tier, maybe 2. So Vindicator, solid C in my opinion. Next up, we have Battle Rager, another solid C tier class. If the game was only played in bigger scale, Battle Rager, super good debuff platform. Battle Rager may be the best, 40v40 siege debuff platform for Troubadour because they just sit in the it does not matter how many people are attacking me. Occasionally you can't get one shot. If you hit big crashes with body blocking the way it is, you can eat a ton of damage. I have a lot of fun playing Battle Rager. There are some weaknesses to the class. Not good in small scale for the most part, outside of some weird, cheesy things. Not the greatest small scale, and it's sort of pigeonholed into being a debuff platform, in my opinion, right now with Troubadour. When they fix Troubadour to require the songs, Battle Rager will be a great platform for that because you have a lot of bar space. So yeah, I think Battle Rager, while it is C tier, I don't think it's doing it enough justice, because a lot of people are going to see C tier and be like, oh, it's just a terrible class. But the only reason I'm putting Battle Rager this low is because it's just not something I would play in a lot of situations in this game. But that doesn't mean it's terrible in all situations. Next up, we have the Barbarian. I've looked at the spec. I know there's going to be some people that are like, why are you putting that low? I mean, look at the theoretical amount of CC you can do on a Barbarian is awesome in theory, but I just haven't seen it. You know, I've gone on the test server and experimented myself. It seems very House of Cards like with the Barbarian. Like, it's very easy to play the Barbarian perfectly in your head and have an idea of what would happen in your head if you were to play this class and be like, oh my god, they wouldn't be able to move with all the CC I put out. They'd be CC'd constantly. But in practice, I haven't seen it. I just haven't seen it done in practice. So I'm going to put it on C tier because I haven't seen it personally. Anybody just own on a Barbarian. They are in male. I haven't had any issues ever killing one. But I don't think they deserve D tier. I think there's enough there to at least keep them in C. Next up, we have the entire Assassin class. Blackguard, Cutthroat, Vandal. It pains me to put the entire Assassin class on here. I have been doing some theory crafting with these specs. Personally, I've been doing a lot of theory crafting with these specs. It is very much still in the theory part, not in the practicality. I tried it out in the actual game part of theory crafting yet. But some of these may get bumped up to B. We'll see. Very special applications. Blackguard also, I guess I'm being a little biased not putting the assassin tax. Like, the assassins are not good in big fights. They just aren't. They are small scale gankers. But I think if the things I'm thinking up right now work, I think there's a chance that some of these specs could get up to B. So I'm not completely hopeless on these. I'm really not. So Blackguard, tanky as fuck. Blackguard can be really, really tanky. Some of the things I'm theorizing I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic. The anti-crit alone basically means they wear plate. Plate maybe more than a plate effectively, because that anti-crit's probably the best stat in the game, and they get 15% for being a Blackguard. So shit, son. It's not bad. Vandal has some things going for it in the CC department. It's a mace user. Mace disciplines are very strong right now. So I think there's some potential there. Cutthroat. Okay, Cutthroat, I'm a little hesitant on. You can do a lot of damage. Okay, you can. But it takes so much time to ramp that damage up and to get it going. And the damage is very finicky. It's very much a House of Cards thing where you have to build it up and things kind of have to be going your way. When things do not go your way on a Cutthroat, you are just dead as fuck. If Cutthroats get lunging daggers. If Cutthroats get lunging daggers and they work like they have in the past, there's a chance it could get B tier right now. Right now it could be B tier. But there's not lunging daggers in the game right now, so it's a C. But I'm optimistic with the things I'm personally testing. Now, the worst shit in the game. What is the worst thing in the game? All right, I'm gonna put Archdruid on here, D. Okay, I know there are Archdruid clips, people one-shotting people, blah 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 blah. If you set it up right, if everything goes your way, you can one-shot people. You know, you night pull into the, you pull some guy in with the knight, and then the knight ults, and you blow up all the orbs at once, and it one-shots people. I totally get it, totally. But in actuality, how much does that happen, and how viable is the Archdruid in all contexts of the game? In all the types of fighting you do, how often do you see Archdruids doing well? Not much. It's very, very, very niche, like hyper niche. So, I'm putting it in D tier. Now, I would love to see the Archdruid actually played like the way the Archdruid is supposed to be played. It's supposed to be this hybrid healer. If you look at the capstone talents and you look at the talents that you get, it's supposed to be played as this, you heal for a little bit, then you do damage. Then you heal for a little bit, and then you do damage. And you're supposed to be playing both the death and the life tray. That's how it's supposed to be played. At least that's how they designed it to be played. If you look at the talents, that's how I think they wanted it to be played. In actuality, it's a death orb spammer. That's what it actually is in practicality. So if some things change and if it actually becomes the thing it was intended to be, it'll be interesting. Because it's probably the Arc Druid played the way it's supposed to be played. If that ever becomes viable, is probably the highest skill cap class in the game. In terms of like the amount of decisions you can make on an Arc Druid is massive. You have 2 trays to manage, you have essence to manage, you have cooldowns, you have positioning, you have orbs, you have prediction, you have enemy movement to take into consideration, you have your team's movement to take into consideration, you've got buffs you're tracking, debuffs you're tracking, timers you're tracking, timers you have to track in your head because you can't track them on the action bar because that action bar is invisible. There is so much potential skill cap to the traditional Arc Druid the way it's supposed to be played. I mean, it is hands down, like none of the classes even come close to the amount of like skill a good Arc Druid could have versus a bad one. So I'd love to see that class be real and what it's actually supposed to be. So that's my Arc Druid rant. And lastly, the worst thing in the game has got to be the Vanguard Scout. Now, I know there are some people that are all about this shit. I know there's a couple Vanguard Scouts out there that are like, what the fuck, man? Listen, dude, it's niche. It's super niche. The Vanguard Scout is 100% a fucking troll spec. It is the spec where if you want to gank people, let's say all you want to do is gank people that are at 30% health fighting mobs. If that's all you want to do and you just want to be the guy that like ganks a guy at 20% health, the Vanguard Scout, it is the best for that because it has damage out of stealth like none other. When you are a Vanguard Scout and you do expose go for broke on somebody, it is crazy. And then you follow that up with the other go for broke skill you get. I mean, you can do a ton of damage with those things combined, especially if you're using like Angel of Death on Banshee, like the Angel of Death passive or something like that, or what's the other one? Pound of Flesh. You know, you're using a lot of that stuff stacking with 20% with the lifesteal. So you definitely, if you want to be the guy that just fucks around with people in stealth, Vanguard Scout is super good for that. You can use Agent Provocateur. Agent Provocateur got a little bit of a nerf with some of the abilities removing you from stealth temporarily. They didn't used to do that. I had some theory crafting for the Vanguard Scout in the huge fights, like in the big sieges, but with the nerf to Agent Provocateur, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if that class is going to be viable big scale because a lot of my build revolved around spamming those agent powers, and those agent powers do de-stealth you long enough to where somebody could probably get you and pop you out. And if you do get popped on a Vanguard Scout, you're basically dead. You have, I guess, the one vanish. You got to sort of hope that works. So, yeah, that's what that is. Vanguard Scout, super niche, super duper niche. If you want to be the guy that ganks people, if you want to be the guy that finishes people off when they're almost close to being dead, and that's like all you want to do, Vanguard Scout is good for that. Otherwise, not super happy with that spec. So anyway, that's my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I actually made this tier list myself with all of these images. It was a huge pain in the ass to get them all uniform, same size, and look good. So I'd love to see your tier list. So get on click the link in the description, make your own tier list, and share it in the comments down below. I'm curious how different your guys' tier list will be from mine. Some people might have completely different tier lists than me. Like, I could be totally wrong. I think some of it is going to come down to the way people see the game. Mine is very much an average of the smaller fights and the bigger fights. You know, some people, if they do their tier list only based off of siege fights, I mean, you won't even see the Slayer on the list. You know, Slayer could be D tier on somebody's list because they only view the game from a siege perspective. So, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make your own tier list. Let me know in the comments down below what yours are, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.